World's largest economy, world's largest democracy, 1.4 trillion economy, and very, very young population. I think great mix, great opportunities ahead for growth. And however, we need to look at India very differently when we look at what we want to do here. If you look at the past, most global corporations, when they looked at India, they were fundamentally designing and creating products for the 14% of the market, which is the developed market. The 86% of the market, which is the developing market, is really where nobody paid attention. And I think that's changing. And India and other countries in the developing markets are really where most CEOs from the developed world are today looking at how to do, what to do, when to do, and a whole bunch of these questions are there in front of them, and a lot of them are taking action today on going into this market. Because fundamentally the developed market are getting pretty much oversaturated, over-competitive, and are all declining. This invisible market of 86% requires strategies and implementations which are different. Different from product design, pricing, packaging, distribution, promotion, and literally everything that you can think of. You need to come at these markets in a very different way. And the rules of engagement to make emerging markets tick are actually going to drive billions and billions and billions of dollars of business here. These markets really require a deep sense of understanding to manage the lack of infrastructure and low literacy levels, unconventional consumer behavior. So you really need to look at the characteristics of these markets. And therefore, one has to learn how to redefine real competition, tap into something called the informal economy, unconventional channels, leverage word of mouth, pool demand to reach critical mass, piggyback innovations in local tradition, and price and package to reflect local realities. So in short, that's really what we need to really look at. We need to really redefine how we approach India and markets like India differently. Therefore, really the future markets are in the developing world, and India, Asia, Africa really reflect where we should focus a lot of our attention to in terms of what we should be doing. Therefore, this 86% of the market and the solution around this whole 86% needs innovative principles and look at the whole bottom of the pyramid very, very deeply. And therefore, the areas to focus on are price and performance of products and services, innovation. Innovation looking at very hybrid solutions. Solutions that are developed must be scalable and transportable across countries, cultures, and languages. So if you design something in India, for India, can you look at designing it so that you can transport it across other countries, cultures, and languages, in which case you can really pool a lot of the requirements of Asia and Africa. All innovations fundamentally will need to look at conserving resources. There are not too many resources around. You need to also look at how do you eliminate, reduce, and recycle. So these are all issues which are very different. You really not looked at these issues when you design products and processes for the 14% of the market. You need to relook and redesign, and not just redesign, probably design from ground up. And reducing resource intensity must be a critical principle of product development. You can't assume that the gas prices are going to remain where they are. You need to relook at how you how do you design for India? So if you look at India and you look at the advertising that happens on cars in India, the first question that the consumer asks is how many liters, how many kilometers to a liter. Now really you have to start from there. If you do not look at that, then you're really not actually designing a product for India. And therefore, product development must start with a deep understanding of functionality and not form. I think that's very critical. You need to look at this functionality which is required for the Indian market. In addition, process innovations are also as critical as product innovations in these markets. So not just product, but process. So how do you distribute in a market which is a market like India? So many years ago, we were faced with this whole issue of distribution in this country. 15 years ago, as a company, we re-looked at the distribution of phones in this country. And the typical model of phone sales all over the world was that you sold the phone along with the operator. Okay? When we re-looked at this whole market in India, we said that's not going to work here. Because the issue is that the distribution process that the telcos have in the country is not yet developed. So we needed to re-look at what we should do for India. So we looked at what Hindustan Levers was doing in India. How were they distributing their products down to every village? And so we adopted the FMCG model for distribution of phones in this country. And we innovated on this with Nokia. And we came up with exactly the same model that Levers had created in India to distribute phones. And we today have 250,000 points of sale where phones are sold, with close to 250 redistributors. Why do you have redistributors? Because you don't have any idea about the credit history of the retailer that you're selling into. So therefore, fundamentally, you need to re-look at how do you change your processes, how do you actually distribute your products in this country. And therefore, this whole idea of innovating in every manner is absolutely essential. The other area that you need to look at is de-skilling. You really can't look at the way you do today. Product usage should be the way you have to look at every product, and Frank also did talk about this, is that how do you make a product simple to use? How do you end up using the minimum skills to operate anything? And therefore, connecting to this is this whole idea of educating customers of product usage is extremely important. And the other most critical part is that when you're having a lack of infrastructure, you're not having power in a lot of countries, a lot of the cities and villages of this country. You have dust, you have moisture, whole bunch of this hostile environment. You just cannot take a product from Europe and try and run it in India. It just won't work. So you need to relook at this hostile environment and create your products for India. And therefore, if you look at this whole idea of frugal engineering that's been doing the rounds in India, and this whole idea of serving the 86% of the market using frugal engineering, I think it's absolute must. To build products for emerging economies, we need to inculcate this whole concept, the mindset of frugal engineering. Our economies have a lot of people who are at the bottom of the pyramid and are unable to afford traditional versions of products like homes, cars, washing machines, and other traditional goods and services that more developed countries take for granted. But frugal engineering is not simply low-cost engineering. It is not a scheme to boost profit margins by squeezing the marrow out of suppliers' bones. It's not simply the latest take on decades-long focus on cost cutting.